Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today the topic for discussion is FSMO role transfer. So let's see what we have on the agenda today. So we'll look at what is FSMO transfer. Then we'll look at the prerequisites to transfer FSMO roles. Then we'll look at when to transfer FSMO roles and ways in which we can transfer the FSMO roles, the process to transfer the roles, and last we'll have some demos on transferring FSMO roles using graphical user interface and the command line interface. So let's get started. So before that, let's understand what is a domain controller. So any computer on which Active Directory database is present is called as a domain controller, or any computer on which Active Directory domain services are installed and configured can be called as a domain controller. So we have two servers, Berlin DC, Boston DC. We have installed Active Directory domain services and a database has been created. That's the reason these servers are domain controllers. And as you know that we have other servers as well in the infrastructure, database servers, application servers, file servers, say update servers, so on and so forth. These are not domain controllers. These can be either member servers or standalone servers. So our FSMO roles can be only designated to a domain controller. So let us understand what is FSMO transfer. Now the process of migrating any FSMO role from one domain controller to any other domain controller is known as FSMO transfer. So it's somewhat like this. So we have two domain controllers and we are transferring FSMO roles from one domain controller to another, or we are migrating the role from one domain controller to another. So this entire migration is known as FSMO transfer. So let's understand the prerequisites to transfer FSMO roles. Now both the source domain controller and the target domain controller should be up and running and should be able to communicate with each other. So there are two prerequisites. Number one, the source domain controller and the target domain controller should be up and running and they should be able to talk with each other. They should be able to communicate with each other. So let's take an example over here. Let's say we have two domain controllers, London DC, Paris DC, and London DC is our RID master. Now we need to transfer this RID master from London DC to Paris DC. So the first prerequisite is source and the target. So London DC is the source and Paris DC is our target. So both these domain controllers should be up and running, and the second prerequisite is they should be able to talk with each other. So they should be able to a proper communication between them. Then and then only we will be able to transfer any FSMO role from one domain controller to the other domain controller. So when to transfer FSMO roles, in which scenarios or in which situation we transfer FSMO roles. So let's say we are in a process of decommissioning a domain controller which is holding an FSMO role. So in such situation, we'll go ahead and first transfer the FSMO role to any other domain controller and then gracefully decommission the domain controller. So this is one of the situations. Second one can be, let's say we are taking a domain controller offline for some scheduled maintenance. So if that particular domain controller is holding an FSMO role, it is always recommended to say transfer the role to some other domain controller and take that domain controller offline. So for example, let's say before patching activity, or we are restarting a domain controller, or let's say we are making some say hardware configuration changes, or say OS upgrade, it is always recommended to transfer the role and then perform any maintenance activity or task on a domain controller. Now we again transfer FSM roles to follow some best practices or guidelines which are given by Microsoft. So as you know that there is no hard and fast rule that this role has to be on this domain controller, but Microsoft has given some best practices or say guidelines on the FSMO placement, and our organization is following those guidelines, and in that process we need to transfer or say make some changes in our FSMO placements. And so in this say task, we transfer the FSMO roles from one domain controller to another domain controller. So these are the say few scenarios in which we transfer FSMO roles. So let us understand ways in which we can transfer FSMO roles. So we can transfer FSMO roles via graphical user interface, via command line interface, and we also have one another way, that is the PowerShell way. So there are three ways in which we can transfer FSMO roles. Now in our labs, we will only focus on the graphical user interface and the command line interface. So in our labs, we'll transfer FSMO roles using GUI and CLI. So let us understand the process now to transfer FSMO roles. Let's understand how we transfer the FSMO roles using the graphical user interface. So step number 1, connect to the target domain controller, and step number 2, transfer. It is that simple. Now for domain wide roles, we will use Active Directory users and computers console to transfer all the domain wide roles. For domain naming master, using graphical user interface, we will use Active Directory domains and trust to transfer our domain naming master using graphical user interface. And to transfer schema master using graphical using interface, we need to expose the schema management console, add that schema management snap in our Microsoft management console, and then transfer the schema master role. So we have already discussed, there is a video on Microsoft management console, you can have a look at it. Now process to transfer FSMO roles using command line interface. Now command line interface is the most easiest way. Again, connect to the target and transfer. So use ntds util.exe utility to transfer all the 5 FSMO roles. So this is the very easy utility, one of the say easiest utilities to transfer FSMO roles. So let's move on to the demos now, and let's transfer FSMO roles via graphical user interface and command line interface. So we are logged on to our labs, and our target would be to transfer all the 5 FSMO roles via GUI graphical user interface from Atlanta DC to Singapore DC, and transfer all the 5 FSMO roles back to say Atlanta DC using command line interface. So first of all, let's open up Active Directory users and computers over here. And we can see that we have 2 domain controllers, Atlanta DC and Singapore DC. Right now I'm logged on to Atlanta DC. So let us transfer all the 5 FSMO roles from Atlanta DC to Singapore DC. Now the process is we need to connect to the target and then simply transfer. Now we can perform this task from any domain controller. It is not necessary that you have to log on to the target or the source. You can perform this activity from any domain controller. So let me first transfer all the 5 domain wide roles, and for that I am logging on to Active Directory, users and computers console, and I'm right clicking on the domain and I'm clicking on operations masters over here. Now if you see over here, the current operation master, the RID master is Atlanta DC, and we are connected to Atlanta DC. So this will not work. We need to connect to the target, and our target is Singapore DC. So first let us connect to Singapore DC. Over here is as well, you can see Atlanta DC. So we can simply right click over here, change domain controller, and we'll connect to Singapore DC now. Now we'll again right click on contoso.com domain, click on operations masters. Now this is the current RID master and we are connected to Singapore DC. Now the process is very simple. Click on change and click on yes. So it says the operation master was successfully transferred. Now you can see over here we are connected to Singapore DC, and we are connected to Singapore DC over here, and our FSMO role is on Singapore DC, the RID master. So in same way, if you just click on the PDC tab at the top, the PDC emulator is Atlanta DC and we are connected to Singapore DC already. So we can simply click on change over here and click on yes. Now our PDC emulator is Singapore DC. Same thing with infrastructure master. Currently Atlanta DC is infrastructure master and we are connected to Singapore DC. We need to transfer the role. I'll just simply click on change and I'll click yes over here. So all the 5 roles, all the 3 domain wide roles are now on Singapore DC. So let us verify this. Let me open up the command prompt and let's execute a command, netdom query FSMO. So this netdom query FSMO will display all the FSMO role holders. So let's see how the command goes. It's taking its time. Perfect. So we can see that the 3 domain wide roles are transferred to Singapore DC, and the schema master and the domain naming master are still on Atlanta DC. Now let us transfer domain naming master. Now to transfer domain naming master, we need to open up another console, and that is Active Directory, domains and trust. Okay, it's not contactable. That's okay. Needs to contact the primary domain controller. So still the PDC is not contactable. That's the reason it's giving us the warning. So let me try it out again. It says you cannot modify trust. That's okay. We are not here to modify the trust. We need to transfer the role. So the process remains the same. Connect to the target and transfer. So I'll right click and change Active Directory domain controller, connect to Singapore DC, right click, go to operation master again and click on change, and we are done. So we have successfully transferred the domain naming master as well. So let us run the command again, netdom query FSMO. So all the 4 roles except the schema master should be on Atlanta DC. Okay, so all the 4 roles are on Singapore DC, only the schema master is on Atlanta DC. Now to transfer a schema master using graphical user interface, we need to expose the schema management, say snap-in. So to expose the schema management snap-in, we need to register a DLL file named schmngmt.dll. Now I have created a video on Microsoft Management Console. You can watch that video. Okay. So first of all, we need to register the schema management DLL and add the schema snap-in in the management console, and then we can transfer the FSMO role. So let me register the DLL. So regsvr32 is the command to register any DLL, not just schema management DLL, but we can register any DLL using regsvr32. Here I will register the schema management DLL, that is schmngmt.dall. So I have successfully registered the DLL. Now I'll simply open up Microsoft Management Console and go to File, go to Add, Remove, Snap-in, and we have our Active Directory schema snap-in over here. Click OK, and again the process remains the same. Connect to the target and simply transfer. So I'll right click, okay, change Active Directory domain controller. I'll connect to Singapore DC. Now it will give me a warning that you won't be able to make any changes in the schema, because this Singapore DC is not a schema master and it has a read only copy. So I'm okay with it, because we are not making any changes in the schema. Instead, we are just transferring the, we have connected to Singapore DC to transfer the schema master role. So I'll simply right click again, go to operations master and click on change, and okay, so we are getting some error over here. The transfer of the current role could not be performed. Let me check the, say, DNS settings over here. So this happens that it is not, say, flawless. Okay, it's 100 or 200, that's okay. Now let us perform the same activity from our Singapore DC. So this is our Singapore domain controller now. Now let us try to transfer all the roles from Singapore DC back to Atlanta DC using command line interface. So let me open up command prompt and use ntds util. Now this tool ntds util, I'll be creating a separate video on ntds util, but for the time being I'll just run through the process of transferring FSMO roles. So I'll just type in roles, came to FSMO maintenance, so we'll connect to the target now. Connections, connect to server Atlanta DC. This is our target now. So we are transferring role to Atlanta DC. So it has logged on to Atlanta DC. So I'll just come out, quit. Okay, and if you want to learn more about this ntds util, just put in a question mark and it will give you all the options you can do. So just type in transfer RID master and click on yes. So I was able to transfer RID master over here. So transfer infrastructure master. So it is that easy. Just connect and transfer. Transfer PDC. I think we have to use the name over here. That's not emulator, just PDC. Enter. Yes. And for, it's not domain naming master, it says just transfer naming master. Okay, that's it. So I'll just type in transfer naming master. Perfect. So we have transferred all the roles back to Atlanta DC. Now what we'll do is we will transfer the schema master from Atlanta DC to Singapore DC using NTDS util. So we'll again go to connections. Okay, connect to server Singapore DC. This is our target now. Okay, now we are binded to Singapore DC. I'll just quit. Okay, transfer. We may get into error, I don't know. Schema master. Oh, okay, perfect. It went into an error. See over here. So the error code may indicate there is some connectivity issue. Let me open up DNS over here and check, because say 99% if you get any errors in Active Directory, DNS is the culprit. So let me check DNS over here. I think DNS looks good. I don't think there is any issue with our DNS. It will take some time. Okay, to let me open up another command prompt. Let me force replication. So we will be taking up this rep admin in our upcoming sessions. Okay, I think everything things finished with no errors. So let me just run it a number of times, and now let us transfer our schema master. Let's see what happens now. Again it's erroring out. Okay, so there is some issue with the connectivity, but that's okay. Okay, that's okay. But now you understood at least the process of transferring FSMOs using graphical user interface and command line interface. Let us run the netdom query again. So all the 5 roles should be on our Atlanta DC now. Let's see. Perfect. So all the 5 roles are on Atlanta DC. So hope you have enjoyed the FSMO transfer lab, and if you want to know anything about FSMO transfers, please leave a comment. Let's summarize what we have done today. We have understood what is FSMO transfer, prerequisites to transfer FSMO roles, when to transfer FSMO roles, ways to transfer FSMO roles, the process to transfer the roles, and we have seen the demo on FSMO transfer using graphical user interface and command line interface. So hope you have enjoyed today's session. Thanks for joining, and if you feel this channel is helping you to learn anything new, please subscribe and share this channel with your technical community, and enjoy your day.